You build a knowledge base as you go along. You know when you've gotten scammed in the past. Potentially, if you're paying attention to it, you can know how that happened. And then you can make adjustments to the way your site operates to stymie those kinds of efforts.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of What's Working in E-commerce. I'm your host, Eagan Heath. I'm a partner at Asymmetric Marketing. You can check out the work we do and the results we've gotten for our clients at asymmetric.pro. Today, I'm speaking with Russ Hawkins. He's the CEO of Agilence Inc., and he's going to talk to us all about being agile and having business intelligence for our e-commerce businesses. Tell me if I did that right, Russ, or if I got it wrong.
No, you did it right. That's it. Agile intelligence is what it's all about.
Agilence. That's great, Russ. Tell us a bit about what you do and kind of the software and the platform you guys have there.
So we have a data analytics platform that essentially takes data from any number of sources that retailers operate. Our whole business is to not replace any of these other systems, but basically to provide a centralized place where all of the data and the data exhaust that a company generates, bring it together. A lot of what we do is around data management, making sure that it is comparable to each other and harmonized, if you will. And then we add value to the database by broadening and deepening, adding mathematical indicators, KPIs, statistical operators on the data. And the whole thing is to help our customers make better data-driven decisions. So essentially giving them access to the data that they already have in a way that's easy.
Yeah, that's great. And for an e-commerce store owner or marketer, can you give us an example of what some of that data might be, or kind of what are the data points you guys are looking at?
Oh, well, of course, we're looking at the click rates, the amount of traffic that's coming in, relevant to time of day, geographic location, where it's coming from a geography, if we can figure that out, conversion rates, post-sale, looking at affinity sales and average orders, try to figure out some of the demographics of customers, looking at the credit and credit cards and how the credit cards are used. One of the things we do is around minimizing the damage that can happen through fraud, where you might have somebody using the same credit card to order and deliver product to multiple sites, or using multiple credit cards to deliver to the same site. Really a whole bunch of operational stuff that you can figure out from the data that you collect.
I appreciate you talking about the fraud piece of it too. I think that's really often a major annoyance for e-commerce sellers. How can they prevent against fraud?
Well, I think there's two aspects of fraud from my view. If you want to stop it real time, there are some software solutions out there that help you determine whether a particular buyer is a legitimate buyer. There are databases and companies out there that will provide you with information about people that are known fraudsters. I always tell people to pay a lot of attention to the credit cards and the addresses that are being used, both the web addresses as well as the physical addresses that things are being shipped to. So if you can do that on a real-time basis, if you got some of these services that help you make a decision before the transaction has happened and you can stop the transaction, that's one way. For most of our value is in forensic work, being able to look at the data that you've already done, all the transactions that you've done, and look for patterns in there along the same kind of ideas, so that the next time that person comes to your site or tries to make a purchase, you've got your own set of kind of bad folks and good folks, so the white hats and black hats, so to speak.
Yeah, pretty interesting. And then on the sort of those analytics side you're talking about, do you see this as a way that people are sort of supplementing what they might be seeing in, say, Google Analytics, Shopify, their Klaviyo email marketing, or other tools? Are you kind of stitching together with that data? Are you adding other data points for them to look at? How do you think about that?
Well, we try to bring data from any number of sources. So all the ones that you described, I mean, I think Shopify, for example, does, I think, a pretty good job of built-in analytics, but they don't capture everything. There's specific data around your own experience that you can cull out of the database that's created. So what we think of is trying to be a centralized location where you can bring in data from a variety of different sources and map it against each other and try to gain insights from it. I mean, fundamentally, it's all about knowing who your customers are and what their behavior is. You want to reach as many as possible, and you want to make it easy for them to buy.
Yeah, that's great. I'm looking through the success stories and things on your website here, Russ, and some of the case studies. Looks like you guys work with just some absolutely major brands. I encourage people to check them out. I see a lot about asset protection on there. My very first job out of high school was working at Target, and I know that
Ah,
was a whole department. How do e-commerce brands think about asset protection? And maybe talk a little bit about that.
yeah, well, I mean, so pure e-commerce brands are probably the single asset that they have to protect is their brand, the brand itself. I mean, it's the brand that drives customers to the site. And I'm sure some of your other guests have already talked about ways to do that in terms of creating relevant content for them, investing in SEO, building and nurturing your own email list, and looking for the trends in the market for ways that you can leverage those things. But once you've got all that in place and you're driving traffic to the site, what you want to do is try to not make bad transactions, right? At the end of the day, you want to try to not make bad transactions. And it's a little bit of an art and a little bit of science. I think my experience has been that, at least in terms of the way that we operate, is that you learn from your experience. You build a knowledge base as you go along. You know when you've gotten scammed in the past. Potentially, if you're paying attention to it, you can know how that happened, and then you can make adjustments to the way your site operates to stymie those kinds of efforts. I mean, a lot of it obviously is around credit card fraud and those kinds of things in a pure e-commerce environment. In a broader segment, if you're running a retail store as well, and you're doing things like allowing companies to buy online and pick up in the store, there's all kinds of opportunities for things to get confused, buying online, returning in the store, keeping track of the way people have acquired the products and making sure that you have the data that allows you to handle the subsequent transactions more easily, whether they're buying, whether they're picking up in the store or returning in the store. So there's a lot of different ways of doing it. The other things from an operational standpoint, returns management, I think, is a very important thing around fraud. Being able to track a particular item and to ensure that you're providing refunds or returns on product that wasn't bought from you is an important thing. Volume purchases a lot of times are feeding third party markets where people are taking advantage of loyalty programs and limited time offers and discounts to buy product from you and then reselling it on other markets. That doesn't help your brand. So asset for me, the biggest asset in a pure e-com market is your brand and how you protect that brand by making sure that you don't succumb to scams and to the bad guys out there.
Yeah, that's well put. Very interesting. I wonder if you could talk a bit about the agile piece. I know you said it's agile intelligence, how you got the brand name. For anybody who's not familiar with that, maybe you could talk a bit about agile, and then I think you're applying it uniquely here. Maybe you could talk about how you guys have done that too.
Well, the real driver of agile is really more time to value or time to insights. Many of our customers are aware of problems that they've experienced in the past, but typically they, number one, don't get the ability to analyze that until certainly days, sometimes it's weeks or months later when somebody finally has the time to review things. And then obviously that the longer time that's gone on, the less likely it is that you're going to be able to use that data and those insights to make decisions that will prevent losses from happening up front. So the other part of agile is to make it available on kind of an immediate basis as quickly as you can. So agile intelligence is, I guess, the opposite would be long ago information or something along those lines.
Outdated, yeah.
Yeah, making it
Mhm.
available very quickly, making it detailed enough so that you understand what the issues are, and hopefully putting you in a position to make a decision that's going to save you some money.
Yeah, that's great. I think we've got people listening that maybe sell primarily through e-commerce, but for some, it's e-commerce is a piece, and then they do retail. I know you work with a lot of retailers.
We
Maybe
do.
for e-commerce brands that are pivoting or adding into retail, maybe talk through some of the risks, some of the concerns there that they may not anticipate if they're used to selling online.
Yeah, well, I think, first of all, the pandemic could change the world dramatically with regard to the way inventory is managed, for example. So I always tell our customers to make sure you have a good handle on inventory. The last thing you want to do is disappoint the customer by having them try to buy a product on your site or in your store and you not to have it. It's not the right product isn't in the right place at the right time. During the pandemic, what we've seen is retailers that are operating both bricks and mortar and e-com sites have started to rethink the way that products are distributed. They're thinking more about the retail stores not just being showcases, but they're also mini warehouses. They're ways of getting the product closer to the customers for immediate gratification. And so I think that you have to have a tight connection between what's happening on your commerce site and what's going on in stores. Make sure you have the same promotions and the same, or it doesn't have to be the same promotions, but oftentimes you need to be aware that people are going to use your site to shop, and then they may buy somewhere else, or they may be in your store and then looking to reorder and expand the order. And so you need to have some consistency between the way the products are presented. You need high quality images. You need good product descriptions so that it's all well understood. I know for myself, I just had this experience last week where I'm a big fan of Lululemon clothing, even though I'm
Yep.
probably not the primary demographic for it. But I love their ABC pants, and when I go in the store, it's great. It's easy for me to find it. When I'm online, sometimes they have so many different options and things that it's hard to figure it out. So making sure that those things are easily transferable, I think, is an important aspect.
Yeah, that's well put. And what strikes me is that it's not just omni-channel. We're selling retail and we're selling online. It's like it's not just one or the other. It is omni-channel. They're helping each other and they're kind of assisting, right?
Yeah, I think of it as kind of a giant organism, so to speak, where there's a right hand and a left hand and a right leg and a left leg, and they all have to operate in some kind of coordination, even though each one does, appeal to a specific customer and has different characteristics in terms of the way that you interact with it. But it is all part of one organism, and you've got to think about it holistically, from my perspective, to maximize the spend from the customer, to make sure you've got the data. The data is key in my view. We're generating data in every aspect of our retail operations, and making sure first that you understand what data that you've got, and then thinking through about how you can put it to your best advantage to either attract more customers, sell customers at a higher value, make higher margins on those customers. And the way to do that is to understand the data that you've got and to make informed decisions based on it.
Yeah, that's great. I think I would be remiss not to ask you about general business advice if I can, Russ. I see you've been president and CEO of multiple companies. You've been doing this at your company for quite a while. And no, it's doing software and analytics and things like this. It's different than e-commerce, but in some sense, entrepreneurship and business is sort of the same regardless of the verticals. Like there's things in common. I wonder if you could share what have you learned and kind of what do you pass on to people who want to see success like you have?
Yeah. So yes, I've run three companies, of which were not founded by me, but I came in really when the initial venture capitalists were looking, I like to say they were looking for adult supervision. Many startup companies have great ideas, but the founders aren't always the best operators. And I'm not saying that there aren't some that are great operators. Some of them are really good. And my approach has usually been to really take the initial time and understand everything that I can understand about the business. So I kind of mentioned a couple parts of this earlier, but you've got to know what you're selling and what that value proposition is for what you're selling. What value are you creating in your customers? How are you providing something that is of use to them and of value to them? So know your products is kind of number one. Know who your customer is, right? People make lots of mistakes sometimes, just trying to sell product A to customer B, and it's not a good match. So know your products, know your customers. Then you got to talk to as many people as possible, and you got to set up ways to do that as much as possible. In a retail environment, you've got to have the right location, you've got to have the right promotions, you've got to have the right displays, you've got to be able to present your product correctly. Same thing in e-com, except obviously it's online. So you've got to drive traffic to the site, and that includes doing things like investing in SEO. And you got to look at SEO and make sure that you're getting value out of it. But investing in keywords and high quality descriptions and pictures that can help drive people to your site. Creating great content, telling stories is what I often talk about. If you tell great stories, then people will resonate to those stories, and then they'll want to check out what you're talking about and go to your site. So touch as many people as possible. And then I like to say, ask them all to buy or make it easy for them to buy. So know your products, know your customers, touch a lot of people, ask them all to buy once, and then ask them again. Make sure you've got that data that you can follow up with it afterwards.
Hey, that's well put. Russ, I don't know if any come to mind, but are there any stories that, from your career or could be a customer story as well, any that really stick with you that you like to tell or that maybe, was a big moment for you guys or you really learned something?
In terms of customers, you mean?
Yeah, or what have you? Any story from, one of your businesses? I'd love to hear one.
Well, in the current business that we had, we started out building we were trying to help customers understand. We originally started with grocers, And we were trying to help them understand what was happening at that point of sale when that customer meets the company, right? And initially, it was really just about looking at those transactions and trying to figure out what was happening there. And most of our customers, as I said, were grocers. And what I realized is that that's really the end of the tail, and you've got to go back to the beginning. You got to figure out not just what's happening when the customers are leaving your store or checking out of your website. You got to think about what it is that's motivating them to come into the store, what it is that's motivating them to visit you and to respond to the marketing that you've done. We've had a number of grocers early on that really thought of things very much transactionally, and we were able to help them understand the entire data flow from the beginning to the end. And the result was is that they significantly improved their marketing offers. Right, very often people build promotions and things with only a very thin hypothesis about how it's going to generate business. I mean, one of the things in the restaurants that we do business with, they do limited time offers. Probably one of the ones that you remember most clearly is $5 footlongs, right? And so it's great to do $5 footlongs, but if you're making very narrow margins and losing, or not, maybe not losing money, but only making a little bit of money, and it's not pulling along the other high margin stuff like drinks and desserts and those kinds of things, then the promotion isn't really worth what it's done. And so we see that situation over and over again, where there's a hypothesis about a promotion that ends up being not really borne out in the data once you analyze it after the fact. And so we've done that many, many times with both in both the retail environment and restaurant.
Yeah, that's well put. We're big fans of connecting the dots on this show and at my agency of, average order value and getting that first customer. That's great. But then what's your customer lifetime value? That's really where the money's made. And so it sounds like, did the promotion connect to higher, lifetime value? And did we get people to come back? I think those repeat purchase rates are just so crucial.
That's well right. And did it do, the promotions are always much sales lift, right? And of course, you're going to sell a lot more, a lot of the things that you're promoting. But the whole theory is that it's going to also cement your relationship with that customer, but also drive other higher margin products. And sometimes that doesn't happen, and you got to be
right. Well put. All right. Well, for folks who want to check it out, I've got your website up here. It's Agilence, Agile, Inc. Is there another place for people to find you, Russ, or check you guys out?
Sure. You can always find me at my direct email, which is rhawkins@agilenceinc.com. And I'd love to hear from some of your listeners. It'd be great.
All right. Russ Hawkins, thank you for coming on and sharing what's working in e-commerce.
All right. Thank you, Eagan. I appreciate you having me on.